मत करो, नानक चिंता मत करो, चिंता तिसही जल में जंत उपायन तिना विरोधी दे। नानक चिंता मत करो, चिंता तिसही जल में जंत उपायन तिना विरोधी दे। नानक चिंता मत करो, नानक चिंता मत करो। ना कर चिंत चिंता है करते, हर देवे जल थल जनता सबते। अचिंत दान दे प्रभ मेरा, विच पात्र कीट पखाणी है। जननी केरे उदर उदक में, पिंड किया 10 द्वारा। दे आहार अगन में राखे, ऐसा खसम हमारा कुम्मी जल माहे। कुम्मी जल माहे तन तिस बाहर, पंख खीर तिन नाही। पूरन परमानंद मनोहर, समझ देख मन माही। पाखण कीट गुप्त होए रहता, ताचो मार्ग नाही। कह तना पूरन ताहू को, कह तना पूरन ताहू को। मत रे जी डराही, चिंता मत करो, चिंता तिसही जल में जंत उपायन तिना विरोधी दे। नानक चिंता मत करो, चिंता तिसही जल में जंत उपायन तिना विरोधी दे। नानक चिंता मत करो, नानक चिंता मत करो। देहो दर्श सुख दातया, मैं गल विच ले मिलाए जियो। देहो दर्श सुख दातया, मैं गल विच ले मिलाए जियो। देहो दर्श तेरा भगता, भुख साध तेरिया, हर लोचा पूरन मेरिया। तेरा भगता, भुख साध तेरिया, हर लोचा पूरन मेरिया। हर लोचा पूरन मेरिया। देहो दर्श सुख दातया, गल विच ले मिलाए जियो। देहो दर्श सुख दातया, मैं गल विच ले मिलाए जियो। ਸਭ ਸ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਟ ਸੇਵੇ ਦਿਨ ਰਾਤ ਜਿਉ, ਦੇ ਕੰਨ ਸੁਣੋ ਅਰਦਾਸ ਜਿਉ। ਸਭ ਸ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਟ ਸੇਵੇ ਦਿਨ ਰਾਤ ਜਿਉ, ਦੇ ਕੰਨ ਸੁਣੋ ਅਰਦਾਸ ਜਿਉ। ਠੋਕ ਵਜਾਏ ਸਭ ਡਿਠਿਆ, ਤੁਸ ਆਪੇ ਲੈਨ ਛਡਾਏ ਜਿਉ। ਤੁਸ ਆਪੇ ਲੈਨ ਛਡਾਏ ਜਿਉ। ਦੇਹੋ ਦਰਸ਼ ਸੁਖ ਦਾਤਿਆ, ਮੈਂ ਗਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੈਓ ਮਿਲਾਏ ਜਿਉ। ਦੇਹੋ ਦਰਸ਼ ਹੁਣ ਹੁਕਮ ਹੋਆ ਮਿਹਰਬਾਨ ਦਾ, ਪੈ ਕੋਈ ਨ ਕਿਸੈ ਜਾਣਦਾ। ਹੁਣ ਹੁਕਮ ਹੋਆ ਮਿਹਰਬਾਨ ਦਾ, ਪੈ ਕੋਈ ਨ ਕਿਸੈ ਜਾਣਦਾ। ਸਭ ਸੁਖਾਲੀ ਬੁੱਢੀਆ, ਇਹੋ ਆਹਲੇ ਮੀ ਰਾਜ ਜਿਉ। ਇਹੋ ਆਹਲੇ ਮੀ ਰਾਜ ਜਿਉ। ਦੇਹੋ ਦਰਸ਼ ਸੁਖ ਦਾਤਿਆ, ਮੈਂ ਗਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੈਓ ਮਿਲਾਏ ਜਿਉ। ਦੇਹੋ ਦਰਸ਼ ਸੁਖ ਦਾਤਿਆ, ਮੈਂ ਗਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੈਓ ਮਿਲਾਏ ਜਿਉ। ਦੇਹੋ ਦਰਸ਼ ਚਿਮ ਚਿਮ ਅੰਮ੍ਰਿਤ।
I just want the best.
ਵਰਸਦਾ ਬੁਲਾਇਆ ਬੋਲੀ ਖਸਮ ਦਾ। ਚਿਮ ਚਿਮ ਅੰਮ੍ਰਿਤ ਵਰਸਦਾ, ਬੁਲਾਇਆ ਬੋਲੀ ਖਸਮ ਦਾ। ਬਹੁ ਮਾਣ ਕੀਆ ਤੁਧ ਉਪਰੇ, ਤੂੰ ਆਪੇ ਪਾਏ ਥਾਏ ਜਿਉ। ਤੂੰ ਆਪੇ ਪਾਏ ਥਾਏ ਜਿਉ। ਦੇਹੋ ਦਰਸ਼ ਸੁਖ ਦਾਤਿਆ, ਮੈਂ ਗਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੈਓ ਮਿਲਾਏ ਜਿਉ। ਦੇਹੋ ਦਰਸ਼ ਸੁਖ ਦਾਤਿਆ, ਮੈਂ ਗਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੈਓ ਮਿਲਾਏ ਜਿਉ। ਤੇਰਿਆਂ ਭਗਤਾਂ ਮੁਖ ਸਾਧ ਤੇਰੀਆਂ ਹਰ ਲੋਚਾ ਪੂਰਨ ਮੇਰੀਆਂ ਤੇਰਿਆਂ ਭਗਤਾਂ ਮੁਖ ਸਾਧ ਤੇਰੀਆਂ ਹਰ ਲੋਚਾ ਪੂਰਨ ਮੇਰੀਆਂ ਹਰ ਲੋਚਾ ਪੂਰਨ ਮੇਰੀਆਂ ਦੇਹੋ ਦਰਸ਼ਨ ਸੁਖ ਦਾਤਿਆ ਮੈਂ ਗਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੈ ਮਿਲਾਏ ਜਿਉ ਦੇਹੋ ਦਰਸ਼ਨ ਸੁਖ ਦਾਤਿਆ ਮੈਂ ਗਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੈ ਮਿਲਾਏ ਜਿਉ ਦੇਹੋ ਦਰਸ਼ਨ ਤੁਧ ਜੇ ਵੱਡ ਅਵਰ ਨਾ ਪਾਲਿਆ ਤੂੰ ਦੀਪ ਲੋਆ ਪਿਆਲਿਆ ਤੁਧ ਜੇ ਵੱਡ ਅਵਰ ਨਾ ਪਾਲਿਆ ਤੂੰ ਦੀਪ ਲੋਆ ਪਿਆਲਿਆ ਥਨ ਥਨ ਅੰਤਰ ਰਵ ਰਹਿਆ ਨਾਨਕ ਭਗਤਾਂ ਸੱਚ ਆਧਾਰ ਜਿਉ ਭਗਤਾਂ ਸੱਚ ਆਧਾਰ ਜਿਉ ਦੇਹੋ ਦਰਸ਼ਨ ਸੁਖ ਦਾਤਿਆ ਮੈਂ ਗਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੈ ਮਿਲਾਏ ਜਿਉ ਦੇਹੋ ਦਰਸ਼ਨ ਸੁਖ ਦਾਤਿਆ ਮੈਂ ਗਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੈ ਮਿਲਾਏ ਜਿਉ ਦੇਹੋ ਦਰਸ਼ਨ ਤੇਰਿਆਂ ਭਗਤਾਂ ਮੁਖ ਸਾਧ ਤੇਰੀਆਂ ਹਰ ਲੋਚਾ ਪੂਰਨ ਮੇਰੀਆਂ ਤੇਰਿਆਂ ਭਗਤਾਂ ਮੁਖ ਸਾਧ ਤੇਰੀਆਂ ਹਰ ਲੋਚਾ ਪੂਰਨ ਮੇਰੀਆਂ ਹਰ ਲੋਚਾ ਪੂਰਨ ਮੇਰੀਆਂ ਦੇਹੋ ਦਰਸ਼ਨ ਸੁਖ ਦਾਤਿਆ ਮੈਂ ਗਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੈ ਮਿਲਾਏ ਜਿਉ ਦੇਹੋ ਦਰਸ਼ਨ ਸੁਖ ਦਾਤਿਆ ਮੈਂ ਗਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੈ ਮਿਲਾਏ ਜਿਉ ਦੇਹੋ ਦਰਸ਼ਨ ਦੇਹੋ ਦਰਸ਼ਨ ਦੇਹੋ ਦਰਸ਼ਨ
जय गुरु जी। गुरु जी के चरणों में सादर प्रणाम और आप सभी संगत जी को प्यार भरा नमन। गुरु जी अपने दर्शन हमें अवश्य देते हैं जब भी हमारे मन में वो आस होती है, जब भी हमारे मन में एक जिज्ञासा होती है, जब भी हम किसी कठिनाई में होते हैं, जब भी हम उनसे प्यार से उन्हें पुकारते हैं, वो अवश्य दर्शन देते हैं। हर रविवार 11 बजे का समय हमने ये चुना है कि हम सब इकट्ठा हों, गुरु जी की वाणी सुने, गुरु जी के नाम का गुणगान करें। और गुरु जी हैं जो किसी न किसी संगत को हमारे समक्ष भेजते हैं, जो अपने मुख से गुरुजी से जो भी उनको प्रेम है, जो भी उनको ब्लेसिंग्स मिली हैं, जो भी उनको शिक्षा प्राप्त हुई है गुरुजी से, वो सब हमारे साथ बाँटते हैं। आज हमारे साथ जो संगत जुड़ रही हैं, वो यूके से जुड़ना है उनको। इट्स अर्ली आवर्स देयर, 6:30 बजे हैं। अभी तक मुझे दिख नहीं रहे कि उन्होंने जॉइन किया है। मैं आई एम ट्राइंग टू गेट इन टच विद यू, गेट इन टच विद हिम, सो काइंडली बेयर विद अस। मुझे लगता है वो अभी किसी भी समय जॉइन करने वाले हैं, तो प्लीज थोड़ा सा हमारे साथ प्रतीक्षा करें उनकी। जय गुरु जी। प्लीज बेयर विद अस अंकल जी। अतुल अंकल, इन द मीन टाइम कोई शब्द ही चलता रहने दें, मैं कांटेक्ट करने की कोशिश कर रहा हूं उनसे।
चिंता तिसी जल में जंत उपायन बिना विरोधी दे। नानक चिंता मत करो चिंता तिसी जल में जंत उपायन बिना विरोधी दे। नानक चिंता मत करो नानक चिंता मत करो। ना कर चिंता है करते हर देवे जल थल जनता सब ते। अचिंत दान दे प्रभ मेरा विच पात्र कीट पखाणी है। जन्मी केरे उदर उदक में पिंड किया 10 द्वारा। दे आहार अगन में राखे ऐसा खसम हमारा कुम्मी जल माहे। जल माहे तन तिस बाहर पंख खीर तिन नाही। पूरन परमानंद मनोहर समझ देख मन माही। पाखण कीट गुप्त होए रहता ताचो मार्ग नाही। कह तना पूरनता हूँ को कह तना पूरनता हूँ को। मत रे जी डराही चिंता मत करो चिंता तिसरी है। जल में जंत
जय गुरुजी।
उपायन तिना विरोधी दे नानक चिंता मत करो
जय गुरुजी।
चिंता तिसही जल में
Uncle, please raise your hand.
उपायन तिना विरोधी दे
Give us some
नानक
indication.
चिंता मत करो नानक चिंता मत करो दीनन की प्रतिपाल करे नित संत बार गनीम नगारै पछ पशु नग नाग नरादपुर सर्व समय सबको प्रतिपार पोखत है जल में थल में पल में कल के नहीं कर्म निध दयाल दयानिध दोखन देखत है पर देत नहार चिंता मत करो चिंता
Uncle, are you there?
जल में जंत उपायन
Give us some indication.
बिना
Raise your hand.
विरोधी दे नानक चिंता मत करो चिंता तिसही जल में जंत उपायन तिना विरोधी दे नानक चिंता मत करो काहे रे मन चितवै उदम जा आहर हर जीव पड़िया सर में जंत उपाए ताका रिज़्क आगे तर करया मेरे माधो जी सतसंगत मिले सो तरया गुर प्रसाद चिंता पाया चिंता तिसही नानक गुर प्रसाद परम पद पानक चिंता मत करो के काश जल में जंत वालो सुत बनता विरोधी दे कोई न किसी की दया मत करो सिर रिज़्क समाहे जल में जंत मनो करया तिना विरोधी दे नानक चिंता वैसे कोसा नान पाछे बचरे चरिया तिन कवण खलावे कवण चुगावे
उससे तो नहीं होना लायक
तिन कवण खलावे कवण चुगावे मन में सिमरन करया चिंता मत करो चिंता तिसही जल में जंत उपायन बिना विरोधी दे नानक चिंता मत करो चिंता तिसही जल में जंत उपायन तिना विरोधी दे नानक चिंता मत करो पुरखा बिरखा तीर्था पुरखा बिरखा तीर्था तटा मेगा केता दीपालोवा मंडला खंडा वर पंडा अंडज जेरज उत्पजा खाणी से तजा सोमित जाने नानका सरा मेरा जनता नानक जंत उपाय के संभाले सबना, जिन करते करना किया, जिन करते करना किया, चिंता बिकरणी ता चिंता मत करो, चिंता तिसही जल में जंत उपायन, तिना विरोधी दे। नानक चिंता मत करो, चिंता तिसही जल में जंत उपायन, बिना विरोधी दे। नानक चिंता मत करो, नानक चिंता मत करो, चिंता तिसही है। नानक चिंता मत करो, चिंता तिसही है।
जय गुरुजी। I'm sorry I've not been able to connect with him. मैं उनसे कनेक्ट नहीं कर पा रहा हूँ और समझ नहीं आ रहा कि क्या कारण है वो नहीं जुड़ पाए हैं। तो we'll just wait for a couple of minutes, else we'll start our session differently. पुष्पल अंकल, अगर आप ज्वाइन कर गए हैं तो आप इंडिकेशन दीजिए, कोई हैंड रेज कीजिए या मैसेज भेजिए। जय गुरुजी। मुझे लगता है कोई विशेष कारण रहा होगा जो अंकल ज्वाइन नहीं कर पाए हैं अभी तक। हालांकि कल ही रात को मेरी उनसे बात हुई थी, तो सो देयर मस्ट बीन सम यू नो डिफरेंट रीजंस कि वो ज्वाइन नहीं कर पाए हैं। तो आई थिंक व्हाट वी विल डू, हम जैसा करते हैं, कभी ऐसा मौका आता है तो हम जो संगत जुड़ी हुई है उनको मौका देते हैं कि वो अपने सत्संग हमारे साथ बांटें। तो एक मिनट, जस्ट अ मिनट, लेट मी सी, देयर इज सम मैसेज। ओ ओ, इट कुड बी। मेरे पास अभी एक मैसेज आया है नेदरलैंड से कि देयर इज अ टाइम चेंज टुडे इन यूके, इट्स ओनली 5:50 देयर। सो हो सकता है कि वो शायद 6:30 का 6:30 के हिसाब से, आई थिंक must be wanting to join or something. So sorry, I think there has been some confusion, although कल रात को ही बात हुई थी जैसा मैंने कहा, और तो अभी वहाँ 5:50 हुए, तो शायद वो 6:30। तो एनीवेज, जैसा मैं कह रहा था कि हम लोग जो संगत जुड़ी हुई है उनसे ही रिक्वेस्ट करते हैं कि वो जो भी आप में से पुरानी संगत, नई संगत, जो भी जुड़े हुए हैं, मैं सभी से हाथ जोड़ के निवेदन करता हूं कि अगर आप में से कोई भी कुछ सत्संग, कोई रीसेंट सत्संग हो, कोई पहले का सत्संग हो, जो भी अगर आप ज्वाइन करना चाहते हैं तो प्लीज रेज योर हैंड्स, सो वी विल टेक अप वन बाय वन। दो हैंड्स रेज हुए हैं ऑलरेडी। सो किन्नू गुरुजी के नाम से एक ज्वाइन किए हुए हैं, तो मैं आपको अनम्यूट करने के लिए कर रहा हूं, तो प्लीज प्लीज स्टार्ट योर शेयरिंग।
जय गुरुजी। शुक्राना मेरे मालिक का, शुक्राना गोपाल अंकल एंड दिस इज किरण आंटी एंड मेरा ऑनलाइन नेम इज किन्नू गुरुजी
जय गुरुजी आंटी, जय
विच
गुरुजी
इज माय निकनेम।
जी।
हाँ जी, मुझे भी नहीं पता है कि मुझे कैसे आज वो अंदर से पुश आया कि आई हैव टू शेयर माय सत्संग।
प्लीज।
हाँ जी, मैं एक इंडियन एयरफोर्स ऑफिसर की वाइफ हूँ एंड वी आर पोस्टेड टू बेंगलुरु राइट नाउ। मेरी जर्नी मालिक के साथ 21 में स्टार्ट हुआ। हम शिलोंग से बेंगलुरु आए और मेरे साथ मेरे हमको सरकारी घर मिलता है जैसे आप लोगों को पता है फौज में एंड बहुत वहाँ से मुझे नेगेटिविटी आ रही थी और बहुत रेस्टलेसनेस आ रही थी। अदरवाइज आई एम अ वेरी काम कूल कलेक्टेड पर्सन एंड मेरे को रात में नाइटमेयर्स आ रहे थे, बहुत नाइटमेयर्स आ रहे थे एंड मुझे नहीं समझ आ रहा था। एंड जैसे कि कोई भी हिंदू परिवार करता है, हमारे घर में हनुमान चालीसा चलने लग गया और माँ ने बोला कि बेटा पाठ कराओ, वास्तु का दोष ठीक करो। नथिंग नथिंग, कुछ भी मेरे को हेल्प नहीं कर रहा था। अच्छा, बड़ी अजीब सी बात है, आई एम बॉर्न एंड ब्रॉट अप इन दिल्ली, लेकिन मालिक के बारे में मुझे कुछ नहीं पता था। शादी हो गई थी और जैसे कि हम बंजारे होते हैं तो हम घूम रहे थे पूरे देश में विदेश में। तो मालिक का तो नाम भी नहीं पता था, गुरुजी तो पता ही नहीं था कि। और बड़ी अजीब सी बात है कि अगर मुझे कोई कहता कि एक कोई बाबा है और आप इनको फॉलो करिए और ये भगवान है, तो मैं नहीं मान सकती थी क्योंकि मेरे लिए ह्यूमन शरीर में भगवान की एग्जिस्टेंस थी नहीं। और फिर ऐसा हुआ कि बहुत नेगेटिविटी आ रही है, रेस्टलेसनेस आ रही है, पंडित आ रहे हैं घर में, बहुत वास्तु हो रहे हैं, रात में मुझे अजीब अजीब ड्रीम आते थे, नाइटमेयर्स आते थे और मैं उठ जाती थी। बड़ी कमाल की बात है, एक दिन ना तो मैं इंस्टा में थी उस टाइम पे, ना तो मेरे को मालिक के बारे में कुछ पता नहीं था, और मेरे पास एक भजन कहीं से क्रॉप अप होता है कि कर कृपा मेहरा साइया। और बड़ी अजीब सी बात है, हिंदी में हम किरण को किरण करके लिखते हैं और मुझे वो कृपा, क्योंकि पा और आ की मात्रा थी, मुझे वो किरण दिख रहा था और वो मेरा थोड़ा सा अजीब सा उस अट्रैक्ट किया उस चीज़ ने, बट मैंने उसे नहीं खोला है। एंड सडनली कहीं से एक लाइन मेरे मोबाइल में आती है, जा कल्याण किता। मुझे ये भी नहीं समझ आया, बट यहाँ मेरी जर्नी स्टार्ट हुई। बिना मैं उन्हें जाने हुए, परमात्मा को मालिक से मिले हुए, मेरे ड्रीम दर्शन स्टार्ट हो गए। उसी रात में बड़े बड़े स्वरूप मालिक के ब्लैक एंड व्हाइट चोला में रथ यात्रा में मुस्कुराते हुए मेरे पास आ रहे थे। मुझे नहीं समझ आ रहा था कि ये मेरे साथ क्या हो रहा है। मेरे साथ रेगुलर, और जबकि अब देखिए पुरानी संगत बोलती है, मुझे बिल्कुल नहीं पता था। अंकल मेरे साथ रेगुलर 4 मंथ्स तक मालिक का अमृत वेला में ड्रीम दर्शन होते थे। मैंने कोशिश की जानने की ये मेरे पास कौन आ रहा है, लेकिन किसी को नहीं पता था। एंड यहाँ बेंगलुरु में एयरफोर्स में यहाँ दूर दूर तक संगत नहीं थी। और यही बात है, मुझे रोज अमृत वेला में मालिक का दर्शन आता। अच्छा, अब क्या था, इतनी सुंदर बात है कि 2021 से पहले आप लोगों का सत्संग हम नहीं सुन सकते थे क्योंकि कोविड नहीं आया था। अब मैंने क्या किया, इस बारी जब ये भजन वापस क्रॉप अप हुआ मेरे पास, कर कृपा मेहरा साइया, मैं इस बार इसको प्ले कर देती हूँ। एंड वहां मैंने परमात्मा को देखा पहली बार, जो मेरे ड्रीम में आ रहे थे। एंड मैं बहुत रोई, जैसे कि होता ही है कि जब आप सोल परमात्मा को देखता है पहली बार तो आप बहुत रोते हैं। मैं बहुत रोई, बहुत रोई, बहुत रोई। एंड उसके बाद मैं यूट्यूब में, फेसबुक में, जहाँ जहाँ गुरुजी के नाम से कुछ भी था, मैंने उसको ज्वाइन करने की कोशिश की। ऐसे में एक आर्मी ऑफिसर की वाइफ की मैंने कहीं से सत्संग सुन लिया फेसबुक में, रैंडम सारे ग्रुप्स ज्वाइन कर लिए जहाँ गुरुजी का नाम था। एंड बड़ी सुंदर बात थी कि उस टाइम पे आप लोगों के सत्संग थे। तो मैंने पुरानी संगत, मालिक का ये था कि मेरे को पुरानी संगत के ही मैं सत्संग सुनती थी। एंड जहाँ मुझे पता चला कि 2007 में ये चोला छोड़ चुके हैं, तो मुझे 2 दिन भी नहीं लगा जानते हुए कि जो है ही नहीं वो मेरे पास अपने आप कैसे आ रहा है। तो मुझे लगा ही नहीं, मेरे को समझ आ गया कि ये कोई डिवाइन शक्ति है। एंड फिर मैं बहुत, सुबह से शाम यही होता था कि मैं सत्संग सुनती रहती थी, सत्संग सुनती रहती थी। रात में कैंसर हो रहा है, सुबह लोग ठीक हो जा रहे हैं। तो मेरे को, मेरे मन में कोई डिस इल्यूजन नहीं आया कि ये परमात्मा नहीं है। मैं इंसान हूँ, मालिक के दर्शन होंगे तो मैं घुटने टेक दूँगी। मेरे पास कुछ और बड़ी अजीब बात थी कि वी आर वेरी फ्लेक्सिबल, आई डोंट नो हाउ। कोई अंदर कुछ कुछ नहीं था, रीति-रिवाज़ कुछ नहीं था। अच्छा, तो उसके बाद मैंने आर्मी ऑफ़िसर का ये वाइफ़ का सत्संग सुन लिया, जो कि इंसिडेंटली सिंगला अंकल की बेटी के पड़ोस में रहती थी द्वारका में उस टाइम पे। कि ब्लेसिंग्स को ना खरीदते नहीं हैं, ब्लेसिंग या तो आप बड़े मंदिर से मिलता है या संगत से मिलता है। अब मुझे ना तो संगत पता था, बड़े मंदिर की मैंने यूट्यूब में 2-4 सिर्फ़ वो शिवलिंग देखे थे। तो मैं डर गई क्योंकि जैसे मेरे को पता चला कि ये मालिक हैं, मैंने अमेज़न से इनकी ब्लेसिंग खरीद ली। और जैसे मुझे हमेशा ये समझ आया अपनी जर्नी में कि आप जितने बुद्धू होते हैं, जितने इनोसेंट होते हैं, उतनी मालिक की प्रेज़ेंस है। तो मोर आप थोड़े से लगता है कि आप स्मार्ट हो गए हो और मालिक को जानने लग गए हो, आपकी ब्लेसिंग्स कम हो जाती हैं। तो वो आंटी, मैंने उनको क्या किया, फ़ेसबुक में ही कॉल कर दिया एंड उन आंटी ने कहा कि कोई बात नहीं, तूने ब्लेसिंग ले ली है और मैं भी फ़ौजी की वाइफ़ हूँ। ऐसा करती हूँ, मैं दिल्ली में कोई पुरानी संगत है, वो ब्लेसिंग्स देते हैं और तेरे घर भिजवाती हूँ। तो कोरियर के थ्रू, मेरे को तो पता भी नहीं है कि वो किसने मेरे को ब्लेसिंग भिजवाई, कोई पंकज अंकल थे। उनकी ब्लेसिंग्स तो पहली बार मेरे पास मालिक का स्वरूप, 2 लॉकेट प्रसाद एंड चरण स्वरूप आया। एंड आप देखिए कि मैं सबकी जर्नी सुनती हूँ, अब जैसे आया, अब आप नई जो संगत है अभी, वो बोले कि चमत्कार, पर मेरे घर में ब्लेसिंग शुरू हो गई। मेरे साथ क्या हुआ, अंकल, अभी पुरानी संगत में किसी ने कहा कि विज़न नहीं आते हैं। मुझे कैसे पता चला कि ये शिव है? मैं अपने रूम में बैठी हुई थी, सडनली मेरे सामने, जैसे कि पुराने मेले में होता है कि आप वो देखते थे हम, आई डोंट नो व्हाट वी कॉल दैट, वो पिक्चर्स देखते थे छोटे बच्चे में हम ऐसे आँख लगा के, तो स्क्वायर-स्क्वायर के शेप में जटाओं वाले शिव जी एंड गुरु नानक जी, जिनका मेरा दूर-दूर से कोई वास्ता नहीं है क्योंकि आई एम अ हिंदू ब्राह्मण, तो मेरे को सिखिज़्म के बारे में कुछ नहीं पता था। फ्रेंड्स होते हैं बट हमने इतना जानने की कोशिश भी नहीं की। तो वो स्क्वायर, स्क्वायर, स्क्वायर करके रील मेरे सामने चल रही है, 1000 के हिसाब से चली जा रही है, चली जा रही है, चली जा रही है। शिव जी आ रहे हैं, गुरु नानक जी, शिव जी आ रहे हैं, गुरु नानक जी। तो मुझे मुझे जानते हुए बिल्कुल भी ये नहीं हुआ कि ये गुरु नानक जी, शिव जी एंड गुरु जी सेम है। अब मुझे, मतलब इतनी सुंदर बात थी कि मुझे ये लगता है कि जब तक संगत के साथ आप जुड़ते नहीं हैं, तब तक आप बहुत बुद्धू और पायस रहते हैं। संगत आपको बताती है कि आप तो ब्लेस्ड हैं और आपके अंदर वो हौमी आती है। चाहे वो कॉन्शियसली नहीं आए, सबकॉन्शियसली आए। एनी हाउ, उन आंटी ने मुझे ये भी कहा था कि तू शिव पुराण पढ़ा कर, और वो गीता प्रेस वाली, तो मैंने शुरू कर दिया था। अब कट टू कि अब मेरे को ये पता था कि हम लोगों का घर बड़ा मंदिर है। आपका, मेरा, सारी आत्माओं का घर बड़ा मंदिर है। तो मैं बहुत रोया करती थी कि मालिक मुझे बड़ा मंदिर कब बुलाएँगे? और इतनी सुंदर बात है, मैं गढ़वाली ब्राह्मण हूँ, उत्तरांचल से हूँ। मेरी बैसाखी से दूर-दूर तक कोई लेना-देना नहीं है, बट मालिक ने शादी मेरी 13 अप्रैल में करा रखी है। तो पहली बार, मेरी माँ देहरादून में रहती है, मैं माँ को लेके बड़ा मंदिर गई। एंड मैं हमेशा जब उनको देखती थी, मेरे को बहुत बहुत विजन्स आते थे। मालिक ने मेरे को 31st का भी दिखाया कि बेटा मैं येलो चोला में था। बहुत वियर्ड था, मैं उनको एम्बुलेंस से निकलते हुए मैंने देखा। एंड येलो चोला, मैंने रघुवीर अंकल से बाद में पूछा तो उन्होंने मुझे बोला कि हाँ, येलो चोला था। अच्छा, फिर उसके बाद क्या हुआ कि मैं बड़ा मंदिर गई हूँ, मुझे पता नहीं है, 1 बजे बैसाखी में फंक्शन हो रहा है बहुत बड़ा, और पंडाल लगे हुए हैं। मुझे ये भी नहीं पता है कि बड़ा मंदिर कहाँ से शुरू होता है, कहाँ खत्म होता है। वहाँ पंडाल लगे हैं और लाइन में सबको बिठा रहे थे क्योंकि 1 नहीं बजे थे। तो जब मैं अंदर जा रही हूँ, जब मुझे ये होता था कि मालिक आप ही सब कुछ हैं, तो मैं बहुत रोती थी। ये आपकी फर्स्ट स्टेज होती है बिरहा की। मुझे नहीं पता था, मैं उनको इतना मिस करती थी, इतना रोती थी कि समटाइम्स मुझे लगता था कि मेरा हार्ट कोलैप्स हो जाएगा। तो मैं उनको कहती थी कि जब मैं अपने घर आऊँगी मालिक, तो क्या आप मेरे को वेलकम करेंगे? क्या मुझे आप गले लगाएँगे? मेरा हमेशा यही क्वेश्चन होता था कि क्या आप मेरे को गले लगाएँगे? मेरे को वेलकम करेंगे? और मैं पंडाल के अंदर घुस रही हूँ। पंडाल के अंदर घुस रही हूँ, मुझे बड़ी हॉन्टेड सी आवाज़ आती है, आओ, आओ। और मुझे लग रहा है ये बड़े मंदिर वाले बड़े अजीब हैं। ये संगत को ऐसा वेलकम करते हैं कि आओ, आओ, आओ। एंड मैं अंदर घुस रही हूँ और मैं कह रही हूँ गुरुजी मैं आ रही हूँ ना, मैं आ रही हूँ। और मैंने अपने हस्बैंड से कहा कि तुमको ऐसी आवाज़ आ रही है? तो उसने मेरे को ना वो बुद्धू समझ के उसने कहा यार तू तो चुप ही रह। और बाद में उसने मुझे बताया कि जब तेरे को ये आवाज़ आ रही थी, तो उस टाइम पे वहाँ तो म्यूज़िक सिस्टम लग रहा था और मेरे को लाउड स्पीकर में तेज़ आवाज़ आ रही है, आओ, आओ। एंड मैं अब मुझे पता चलता है कि वो कितनी प्यारी ब्लेसिंग थी। मालिक ने मुझे 10 मिनट वेलकम किया। एंड अगले दिन 14 तारीख को माँ को लेके मैं फिर गई बड़े मंदिर। और मेरे को एक पुरानी संगत ने 7 बड़े-बड़े स्वरूप दिए मालिक के। मैंने बताया कि बेंगलुरु में जब मेरे को पता चला था कि ये मालिक है, तो मुझे लगा हमारा इस पे स्टैम्प नहीं है। जिसको पता चल सके उसी का भला हो जाए। तो मैं यहाँ ऑफिसर्स की वाइफ जो मुझे दुखी लगते थे, कईयों ने कोविड में बहुत परिवार को खो दिया था। तो मैं हर किसी को कोशिश करती थी कि गुरुजी के बारे में बताऊँ। तो और वो मेरा अपना एक्सपीरियंस था जहाँ संगत इन्वॉल्व्ड नहीं थी, तो मुझे पता था ये भगवान है। तो मैं सबको कन्विंस करने की कोशिश करती थी कि भगवान है, आ जाओ, देर मत करो। तो उस टाइम पे मैं उन लोगों के लिए स्वरूप लेके गई। अब ये स्वरूप के टाइम पे मेरी माँ जो दूर से खड़ी हुई टी पॉइंट में, मेरा सारा परिवार दिल्ली में है, तो भाई से हम कार ले लेते हैं जब हमें बड़ा मंदिर आना होता है। तो मेरे हस्बैंड कार लेने गए और बहुत भीड़ थी, काफ़ी टाइम लग रहा था। मैंने मालिक के सातों स्वरूप को बहुत कस के अपनी छाती से लगा रखा था। और माँ मेरे को दूर से देख रही थी। जब देहरादून पहुंचे हम, तो मैंने कहा माँ एक स्वरूप आप भी रख लो। तो जैसे होता है कि शुरू शुरू में कहते बेटा लोग क्या बोलेंगे कि किस बाबा को फॉलो करने लग गई है। तो तू ऐसा कर कि ना तेरे पास जो छोटा सा स्वरूप था ना, जो कि फ्रेम्ड था और जो टेबल पे रख सकते हैं। अब यहाँ मैं चौंक गई। मैंने कहा अच्छा मम्मा वो स्वरूप कैसा था? बोले वो ऑरेंज कलर का, उन्होंने नीचे कपड़े पहने थे, चोला उन्हें नहीं पता था। ऑरेंज कलर के कपड़े पहने थे और ऊपर अचकन थी जो बहुत चमक रही थी। एंड वो रोड की तरफ देख रहे थे और बहुत हंस रहे थे, बहुत हंस रहे थे, और तूने उनको गले से लगाया हुआ था। और मैंने जब माँ को बोला, क्योंकि हमें सबको पता है कि हमको ऐसा स्वरूप अभी तक तो बड़े मंदिर से नहीं मिलता था कि वो जो छोटा और फ्रेम्ड हो। तो मालिक ने मेरी वो इच्छा भी कि आप मेरे को गले लगाएंगे, और मेरे माँ को साक्षात दर्शन दे दिए, दैट टू आधे घंटे के लिए। ये मेरी फर्स्ट विजिट था बड़े मंदिर का। और अब तो देखिए कहीं भी जाना है मेरे को, कहीं घूमने का दिल नहीं करता है। कहीं होता है, कहीं भी घूमने की बात होती है तो मुझे लगता है चलो दिल्ली चलो। अब फॉर्च्यूनेटली मेरी पोस्टिंग अब दिल्ली आ गई है। और इसके बाद मेरी जर्नी चलती रही। और एक एक और छोटा-सा, क्योंकि और लोग भी होंगे जो सत्संग सुनाना चाह रहे होंगे। जब मैं शिव पुराण पढ़ती थी, तो जब मेरा फर्स्ट टाइम संगत के साथ वो हुआ, और मैं फर्स्ट टाइम एक दरबार में गई, वहाँ एक आंटी ने कहा, "नहीं आंटी, हर किसी को शिव पुराण नहीं पढ़नी चाहिए, प्रलय आ जाती है।" और देखिए जैसे होते हैं गुरुजी वाले ना, थोड़े बुद्धू होते हैं। तो मेरे को ये था कि जो मैंने सुन लिया, कहते कि नहीं, पुरानी संगत में भी किसी-किसी को मालिक ने कहा था शिव पुराण पढ़ने के लिए, हर किसी को नहीं पढ़ना चाहिए। मैं डर गई। मैं जैसी बुद्धू, मैं डर गई, मैंने शिव पुराण पढ़ना बंद कर दिया। 3-4 दिन तक मैंने शिव पुराण नहीं पढ़ा। बट मेरे मन में ये था कि मैं शिव पुराण नहीं पढ़ रही हूँ। तो मैंने अपने हस्बैंड से कहा कि मेरे हस्बैंड ने कहा कि तुम गुरुजी से ही क्यों नहीं पूछ लेती हो कि शिव पुराण पढ़नी है कि नहीं पढ़नी है? तब मेरे पास एक छोटा-सा मंदिर था, अब मालिक की दया से परमानेंट दरबार है, जहाँ रेगुलर सत्संग होते हैं। तो मैं गुरुजी के सामने ऐसे खड़ी हो गई। मैंने कहा गुरुजी क्या मुझे शिव पुराण पढ़नी चाहिए? और मुझे ये लगा कि भाई ये कहाँ से जवाब देंगे? ये तो है ही नहीं, एग्ज़िस्ट नहीं करते, ह्यूमन चोला में नहीं है, तो ये मेरे को कहाँ से जवाब देंगे? एंड मैं सो गई। अच्छा अंकल, ये मेरे जो ड्रीम्स थे ये कंटिन्यू हो रहे हैं इतने मंथ्स तक। मुझे नहीं पता मेरे पे क्या आफ़त आई थी, जिसके लिए मालिक को बार-बार मेरे को ब्लेस करने के लिए आना था। तो अब वापस अमृत वेला के टाइम पे एक मेरे को ड्रीम आता है कि महाभारत जैसी कोई बड़ी-बड़ी किताबें हैं, और लिपि उसकी बड़ी अजीब सी है जो मैं पढ़ नहीं पा रही हूँ। मेरे हस्बैंड भी वहाँ हैं और कोई पूजा कर रहे हैं हम, और मुझे उसे पूजा करने से डर लग रहा है। मुझे एक आवाज़ आती है कि कर, तेरे लिए अच्छा है। मुझे अभी तक कुछ नहीं समझ आया। मैं गुरुजी को एक जलेबी ऑफ़र करती थी क्योंकि मुझे ज़्यादा मीठा अच्छा नहीं लगता था। वो बहुत पतली-पतली जलेबी होती थी और उसके ऊपर पिस्ते लगे होते थे और मैं गुरुजी को हमेशा कहती थी, "गुरुजी टेस्टी है ना? ये वाला टेस्टी है ना? ये बहुत ज़्यादा मीठा नहीं है।" एंड अंकल क्या होता है कि उस जलेबी जैसा जैसे कि मुस्लिम्स के इसमें ये जो दरवाज़ों में, खिड़कियों में कितनी सुंदर-सुंदर नक्काशी होती है ना, ऐसी उस जलेबी से पतली-पतली, पतली-पतली फूल पत्ते, फूल पत्ते, फूल पत्ते बनते गए। अब कट टू बड़ी अजीब-सी बात है, मैं रियलाइज़ करती हूँ कि मैं सो ही नहीं रही हूँ। मेरे हस्बैंड राइट साइड में लेटे हुए हैं, मैं लेफ्ट साइड में हूँ। हम दोनों के बीच में हवा में उस जलेबी से पतला, 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 पतला कितने सुंदर क्रिएटर हैं भाई, आपके लिए क्या-क्या नहीं करते हैं। आपके लिए क्या-क्या नहीं करते हैं और हम रोते रहते हैं। वो फूल पत्ती, फूल पत्ती, फूल पत्ती करके बड़ा, बड़ा, बड़ा करके बड़ा-सा शेषनाग बन गया। मेरे हस्बैंड और मेरे बीच में। मैं बहुत डरपोक हूँ, मालिक को पता था अगर मेरे को असली नाग दिखा देते तो मेरा वहीं मेरे को तो हो जाना था। पतला, 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 पतला कितने तो अंकल वो नाग और उसके नीचे गुरुजी महाराज सिंहासन में क्रॉस लेग करके बैठे हुए, जो मुझे पता नहीं था कि ये इनका फेवरेट पोज है, क्रॉस लेग करके बैठते हैं। और वो जो मैं पिस्ता ऑफर करती थी ना, जलेबी में पिस्ता, उस पिस्ते का उन्होंने चोला पहना हुआ था। और एक बात और है कि मेरे को जब पता चला था कि ये शिव हैं तो मैं इनको रोज चंदन का टीका लगाती थी। और जैसे कहते हैं अपनी ब्लेसिंग्स अपने पास रखनी चाहिए। आपको जग ज़ाहिर आपको दिखाने की ज़रूरत नहीं है कि आप कितने ब्लेस्ड हैं, ठीक है? उसमें हौबे होती है। तो अंकल जब-जब गुरुजी को पता चलता था कि मैं अच्छा काम कर रही हूँ, मैं अच्छा बच्चा बन रही हूँ, तो गुरुजी चंदन वर्षा करते थे। उनकी आँखों से, उनकी नाक से, उनके हर जगह से चंदन की वो होती थी। जब मेरे को रियलाइज़ हुआ कि यही है जो सब कुछ है, तो एक बारी जैसे विष्णु की आरती हो रही थी, तो मैंने गुरुजी की आरती की एलेक्सा बजने लग गया। मैंने एलेक्सा से कहा कि शिव आरती चलाओ, तो उसने जय जगदीश हरे चला दिया। तो मैंने कहा मालिक आप ही तो सब कुछ हैं, और मैं उनकी आरती करने लग गई। द सून मैंने जैसे ही ये आरती की एंड गुरुजी के चरण स्वरूप में, गुरुजी के माथे पे बहुत सारे चंदन के टीके एंड वो पाउडर के फॉर्म में आते थे, जो कि हमने अपने माथे पे लगाते थे। अंकल आए, रघुबीर अंकल कहते तेरे घर में तो मौजे लगे हुए हैं। उन्होंने भी एक छोटे बच्चे की तरह माथे पे वो लगाया। और अनफॉर्चुनेटली 2.5 साल के बाद अब वो आने बंद हो गए हैं। एंड तो उस टाइम पे क्या हुआ कि वही टीका मालिक ने अपने माथे पे लगाया हुआ था, जो टीका मैं उनको लगाती थी, और वो क्रॉस लेग करके मेरे हस्बैंड और मेरे बीच में झूल रहे थे और मैं चुपचाप देखती जा रही हूँ। सडनली मैंने रियलाइज़ किया कि अरे मैं, और इतने वाइब्रेंट, जैसे देखिए मैंने कहा गुरुजी के साथ इट इज़ आई एम पॉसिबल। कभी भी ऐसा नहीं हो सकता कि इट इज़ इम्पॉसिबल। लोग कहते हैं कि मालिक के जब आप दर्शन करते हैं, तो आप तो मालिक इस वोल्ट के ये हैं, आप सहन नहीं कर पाएँगे। पर इतनी अच्छी बात है, मालिक आपके हिसाब से आपके पास आते हैं। बहुत ही सुंदर वाइब्रेंट चोले में, बहुत ही सुंदर, उसमें सुंदर-सुंदर गुलाबी फूल पत्तियाँ भी बनी हुई थी उसमें, और आई होप कि मैं उस कभी भूलूँ नहीं उस दर्शन को। एंड मैंने अपने हस्बैंड को हिलाया कि उठो, 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 गुरुजी आ गए। एंड जैसे हमें पता है कि मालिक को, हमें तब तक ये पता था, हम मंत्र जाप करने लग गए। तो पहली बार मेरे घर में वो डिवाइन फ्रेग्रेंस आई, जो कि ऐसा लग रहा था कि किसी ने 100 बॉटल रोज़ की फोड़ दी है मेरे सामने। और सुबह तक आई एंड सुबह मेरे हस्बैंड ने याद दिलाया कि तू ये बोल के गुरुजी के पास सोई थी कि तेरे को शिव पुराण पढ़ना है कि नहीं पढ़ना है। तो शिव खुद ही आ गया बताने के लिए कि बेटा शिव पुराण पढ़ना है तेरे को। तो अंकल मेरी जर्नी चल रही है, बड़ी सुखद है। ऐसा नहीं है कि दुख सुख नहीं आ रहे हैं, कर्मों की मार हम भी बहुत खाते हैं और खा ही रहे हैं, और मालिक का ये होता है कि कर्म भोग लो मेरे साथ। पर ये सुंदर दर्शन, इसके बाद मैंने अपने घर में मालिक को 2 बारी और देखा। एंड ऐसी ये जर्नी चलती जा रही है एंड आई होप कि ये जर्नी ऐसी कंटिन्यू रहे, और मालिक की बहुत ब्लेसिंग्स हैं। और मुझे नहीं पता कि इससे पहले मेरी ज़िंदगी कैसे थी। पार्टीज़ में जाती थी मैं एयरफोर्स में, अब मेरी पार्टीज़ गुरुजी के साथ होती हैं। 3 साल हो गया अंकल, मैं किसी एयरफोर्स पार्टी में नहीं जाती हूँ, मेरा दिल ही नहीं करता है। मेरा सिर्फ़ ये दिल करता है कि हम कुछ संगत बैठ के सत्संग करें। तो मालिक की दया से, और देखिए मार्च में ही मालिक ने बता दिया था। हाँ, बड़ी अजीब-सी बात है, इनके स्वरूप बोलते हैं। आप उतने रिसीव करने वाले मोड में रहिए। इनके स्वरूप बोलते हैं अंकल, मैं किसी डॉक्टर के पास भी नहीं जाती हूँ जब तक कि गुरुजी नहीं बोलते कि तू जा। तो और ये स्वरूप कैसे बोलते हैं, ये डमशराट्स खेलते हैं, बहुत ही क्यूट है, बहुत क्यूट है। एंड मेरी बेटी कहती है जिसका कि उनके साथ संबंध बहुत सुंदर है, और गुरुजी ने उनके, मेरे हस्बैंड का, मैं जल्दी जल्दी बताऊंगी, मेरे हस्बैंड का गुरुजी ने ब्लड ग्रुप चेंज कर दिया है। मेरी बेटी, मैं एक पतली दुबली इंसान हूँ, तो मेरी बेटी थोड़ी सी ब्रॉड हो रही थी, तो मेरा हस्बैंड उसको छेड़ता था कि तूने तो माँ से ज्यादा मोटी हो जाना है। और उसने अपने आप को, मुझे नहीं पता कि टीनेजर बच्चा है, और उसने अपने आप को शीशे में देखना बंद कर दिया। और वो विजुअलाइज कर रही थी, उसका और गुरुजी का बहुत ही प्योर और बड़ा ही पायस वो है, हम वो विजुअलाइज कर रही थी कि वो गुरुजी के साथ डांस कर रही है। एंड उसने बाद में बताया कि उसने गुरुजी से कहा कि गुरुजी, मैं तो अपने को विजुअलाइज भी नहीं कर सकती क्योंकि आई हैव फॉरगॉटन हाउ आई लुक। और इतनी अजीब और सुंदर बात है, क्या पॉसिबल नहीं है? 2 दिन के अंदर, अंकल मैं इसको चेरी को देखती हूँ, एंड चेरी का बोन स्ट्रक्चर चेंज था। जो मेरा बच्चा थोड़ा ब्रॉड हो रहा था, तभी भी वो अच्छा था, ऐसा ब्रॉड मोटा नहीं हो रहा था, स्टाउट हो रहा था। पर जो मेरा बच्चा, उसको गुरुजी ने बिल्कुल पेटीट एंड सुंदर, और बिल्कुल उसकी बोन्स श्रिंक कर गई, ये कौन कर सकता है? जो जिसका ब्रॉड शोल्डर हो रहा था, वो नैरो शोल्डर हो गया। तो मालिक की कृपाएं अनंत हैं, उसका साइनस दूर किया मालिक ने, जो कि सालों साल से उसको बेंगलुरु से ही मिला था, और क्या क्या नहीं है। और ये जर्नी, मुझे लगता है जैसे मैं 4 साल नहीं, मैं 400 साल मालिक के साथ जी चुकी हूँ। तो ये जर्नी चल रही है, और वो बहुत मैजिकल पिटारा है। जैसे जैसे डीप आप जाओ, जब तक डीप नहीं जाओगे तो मालिक के पास नहीं जा सकते। ऊपर ऊपर से ही आप घर वापस आ जाओगे, चाहे आप कितने सत्संग अटेंड कर लीजिए, चाहे आप कितने बड़े मंदिर में चले जाइए। तो वो जैसे जैसे डीप जाते रहते हो, वो खुलता रहता है, और वो यूनिवर्स के राज आपके सामने खुलते हैं, विच इज वेरी मैग्निफिसेंट एंड फैसिनेटिंग। सो दिस इज हाउ मेरी जर्नी चल रही है। एंड नेक्स्ट ईयर हम दिल्ली आ रहे हैं, तो मालिक की बहुत कृपाएं हैं। थैंक यू मालिक, एंड शुक्राना मेरे मालिक का, आज मेरे को ये अपॉर्चुनिटी देने का। आई डोंट नो कैसे, मैं तो ऐसे घूम रही थी अभी, आज शाम को सत्संग में जाना, मैं तो ऐसे घूम रही थी, सडनली मेरे को एक पुश आया कि आई शुड शेयर माय सत्संग। थैंक यू मालिक, शुक्राना मेरे मालिक का। और आप सब खुश रहिए, और जितना जानने की कोशिश करेंगे, कोई भी नहीं जान सकता है। कोई ये क्लेम करे कि मालिक को जानता है, वो उतना ही जानेगा जितना आपका परसेप्शन है, जितना वो दिखाना चाहता है। वो अनंत, आपको पता ही है कि अगम अगोचरा है। तो कोई ये बोल दे कि हाँ मैं मालिक के साथ रह चुका हूँ और मैं जानता हूँ, नॉट पॉसिबल। एंड गुरुजी के साथ क्या है, अपनी होप्स कभी नहीं छोड़िए। गुरुजी इज आई एम पॉसिबल। थैंक यू मालिक का, एंड शुक्राना मालिक का।
जय गुरु जी। थैंक यू कुरन फॉर सो मच ऑफ लव एंड अफेक्शन फॉर गुरु जी। गुरु जी का सबके साथ एक अनूठा रिश्ता है, और जैसा आपने कहा कि ये पीड़ा दुख तो आते रहते हैं, लेकिन डिपेंड हमारे पर करता है कि हम किस चीज को दुख समझते हैं। वो तो कभी दुख देते नहीं है। हमारे शरीर में किसी तरीके से कुछ करके जो भी आता है, वो सब हमारी अपनी देन है। सो एनीवे संगत जी, जैसा कि हम पहले बात कर रहे थे, और जैसा मुझे एक अंकल ने बताया कि टाइम चेंज हुआ है आज से ही, रात मिडनाइट से। और यही कंफ्यूजन रहा हमारे, और जो हमारी संगत जिन्होंने आज ज्वाइन करना था, पुष्पल दास अंकल हैं, गुरुजी से अर्ली 2000 में जुड़े थे, और पहले तो वो यहीं गुड़गांव में थे। अब वो यूके चले गए। उनकी एक डिजायर थी कि उनको बाहर जाना है, और उनको जो जॉब मिली, उनका सत्संग है लाइट ऑफ डिविनिटी में, जो जॉब मिली उनको, वो इसी करके मिली थी कि वो कुछ समय बाद यूके चले जाएंगे। लेकिन शायद गुरुजी की रजा होगी कि वो काफी लेट हो गए वहां से जाने में, लेकिन अल्टीमेटली वो इस वक्त और काफी समय से यूके लंदन में हैं। और हमारा सौभाग्य है कि वो अब ज्वाइन कर चुके हैं। सो आई एम सो सॉरी जो बाकी संगत वेट कर रही थी। तो बट अगर टाइम परमिट करेगा तो एक दो सत्संग हम आज ले लेंगे। बट पहले हम पुष्पल दास अंकल का सत्संग सुनेंगे। तो अंकल जय गुरु जी।
हेलो, सॉरी, मैं म्यूट पे था।
हाँ जी, हाँ जी। अब आप
वेरी
आपकी आवाज सुन रही हैं हम जी।
ओके, वेरी सॉरी फॉर द कंफ्यूजन। मुझे पहले मुझे तो ध्यान भी नहीं था कि टाइम चेंज होने वाला है। आई माई सेल्फ फॉरगॉट, बट
जी जी जी।
then I thought it must have been factored in, but but anyway, that's fine. So I'll try and sort of be a bit quicker. I'll do it in English because my Hindi is not good enough.
ओके ओके, नॉट ए प्रॉब्लम।
uh,
तो थोड़ा सा समरी बाद में मैं उन संगत के लिए कर दूंगा जो शायद इंग्लिश में इतने वो नहीं होंगे, उनको नहीं पूरे से। वैसे तो आई थिंक हमारी जो संगत है दिल्ली एनसीआर की बहुत है, दे ऑल अंडरस्टैंड, बट फिर भी एज अ प्रोटोकॉल आई नॉट ट्रांसलेट बट आई सम इट अप योर सत्संग। ओवर टू यू पुष्पल अंकल जी।
Okay. So, without much ado, I'll just start, straight from the time when I heard of Guruji. It was back in July 2001, I think. So I got transferred, or actually, not transferred, but I had sort of resigned from my job at PwC in Kolkata and joined Siemens Information Systems Limited, Gurgaon. So that Siemens is no more. So that was a software arm of Siemens, which is now doesn't exist anymore. It is now Atos these days, but back then it
पुष्पल
used
अंकल
to.
आपकी आवाज थोड़ी लो आ रही है, थोड़ा सा।
Okay. Okay.
maybe you can keep your mic closer to your place.
Yeah. Is it?
Yeah.
अभी ठीक है?
हाँ जी, थोड़ा बेटर है जी।
Okay. So I joined Siemens Information Systems Limited in 2001. And that's where I met Colonel Chatterjee, who was one of Guruji's oldest Sangatis, and he used to be very close to Guruji since a long time. And he told me Guruji's various stories and showed me his photograph. And that's when we felt like we should meet Guruji one day. So it was in July 2001, I think, when we made our way to Empire Estates, one of the Sangat days. But back then, obviously, communication wasn't as good as it was later. So it was right at the initial stages when we just went and saw that Guruji was not there. He had been visiting Jalandhar, which he used to from time to time. And we happened to end up, for the first time, we happened to end up at Empire Estate in one of those days when he was away. We were a bit disappointed, but we thought we were going to come back next month when he's back. So we did that. And that was the first time when we saw Guruji. And back then, it used to be slightly different, as not everyone stayed back for Langar. So it was by invitation only from Guruji himself. Based on what he decided, who to keep back and who to send home, it was only known to him. So all we knew was if he asks anyone to stay back for Langar, then he's very fortunate. So that's how he saw it at the time. And there were people who had been going there for months and who hadn't been asked to stay back. So I thought, we'll have to wait until that happens. But very surprisingly, and to our delight, he spoke to us the first time straight away, and he asked us to stay back for Langar. And so back then, to give you a bit of a background, it was quite. So I was in quite a tight situation from various angles in my life. Firstly, financially, it was very tight because I was promised. The whole reason I joined Siemens and Gurgaon was I was recruited to be deputed to the UK. And so I joined thinking that, I was just going to the UK within the first, month or a couple of months, maybe at most. So that's how I had planned things. But then it had been, I think, about 9-10 months, and there was no sign of this UK assignment. I think something had changed in the project. So they needed more people in offshore now than on site. I didn't have a problem with that per se, but then Delhi was 3 times more expensive than Kolkata, where I was from. I hadn't planned to settle down there for long term, and the initial setup cost is quite high, as you would know. So that's why I was feeling a bit tight financially, and then there were other problems as well. Like my wife had a miscarriage, and there were she was showing symptoms which we were told would need surgical intervention if it didn't settle down on its own. So that was a major concern as well. So it was at this stage that we saw Guruji for the first time. And if you look at what the title of my piece on in Light of Divinity says, that the first visit grants all desires, that's exactly what happened. I didn't write the title. It was, I think, Jitu uncle who summarized that, but it was summarized brilliantly. So just reading that title basically tells us what exactly happened. So in the first evening itself, when we had langar, went home, and after that we felt some sort of a which cannot be explained, but we felt some kind of a calm and bliss, which we hadn't felt before ever. And from that evening onward, things started to fall in place. Not everything at the same time, but things started falling in place in life in general. So my wife's condition sorted on its own, didn't need a surgical intervention. And then within the next few months, I had my first assignment abroad. I didn't get posted in the UK straight away. It was a project which was managed by India. So it was about a 3-4 months deputation. But very importantly, the project was a major success. It got people's attention, positive attention from the management, and helped with a much needed push in my career. And again, the most important thing was within the next few years or so, Guruji blessed us with a child, my only son. But I'll come to all that a bit later. But I'll try to do it in. I'll try to narrate things in a bit of a sequence. I'll narrate it in through the various events. It's going to be a bit event based, but if we line them up side by side, all the events where Guruji's blessings showed through in our lives, it'll almost become the story of my life. It'll almost become a biopic, so to say. And I'm saying this only because just to stress the fact how deeply his blessings influenced and decided the course of our lives. So so then the first thing is, if I try to just give me one moment, so I'll try and make sure that I go in sequence and not go back and forth, so that I just have the pages from the Life of Divinity in front of me, so that I don't miss anything. So firstly, there were various medical issues in my family. So I was diabetic. I didn't know that for. Sorry, go on. I was. Sorry, did anyone have a question? Because I think I heard someone say something. Or should I continue?
No, it's okay. Please carry on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So firstly, I was a diabetic. I've been a diabetic since I was 29. Probably I was diabetic even before that. It's just that no one really bothered to test, and so it was quite a concern, because I had various issues. I had a weight problem. which is what I think led to this type 2 diabetes. And we were quite worried because I was too young. And even at that stage, to have already diabetes, cholesterol, and all those things that early age, it cannot be good in any respect. So one day, like we were at the Sangat, and Guruji used to distribute the prasad. It used to be halwa usually, but on certain days, if someone got some sweets, then that would be the prasad. So one day, I think it was kalakand, and he just picked up. I counted the number because when he gave it to me, it was 11 pieces, so 11 kalakands. Someone who has been diagnosed with diabetes, and it wasn't controlled at that time. And I was thinking, should I be having this amount of sweets? And then realized, and Colonel Chatterjee just told me that it was Guruji's prasad. It's going to sort out my diabetes, if anything. So I had all the 11 pieces of sweets, and I think I had a blood test the day after, or the following day. And for the first time, I think the results came out okay. Prior to that, it was always kind of overshooting the range. But on that particular day, even after having 11 kalakans, it came out all right. So that's when I realized that, so this is, that's when it was very initial stages. And that's when I started to realize, we all started to realize how his blessings were affecting us. Someone having that amount of sweets, the blood sugar levels didn't go up. On the contrary, came down to within the limit for the first time. So that was an indication of how he was blessing us in our lives. Same thing happened with my wife. So she had a blood pressure problem right from the beginning, and she was often on medication. So because she was very young to go on medication at that point, we thought that it could be handled without medication. So she would go on medication for a few months and then try and wean off the medication, but her blood pressure would come right back, and then she would have to fall back upon medication. And so that used to be the story, off and on. And then after we saw Guruji, things started changing. So one day when we went to the Sangat, and we came to, so the first thing that we did when we went to Sangat was sit and wait for Guruji at Empire Estate, I mean, Chota Mandir. And then we would all queue up for the pranam, and then we would go back to our places. And then there would be prasad in the langar. There would be chai prasad, kara prasad, langar, and so on. So when we queued up to offer our pranam, Guruji joked with us. He did so in Punjabi. We didn't follow at the time, but someone translated kindly for us. And what he said was, because we were both wearing green on that day, quite by coincidence, Guruji picked on that and joked that we were both wearing green. And he even apparently asked me how I got the Kuri from Chandigarh to marry me, which is what I still don't understand why he said that. Because neither myself nor my wife have been to Chandigarh ever, although we planned to, but we hadn't been at that point. Actually, haven't been even now. But he said that. Why he said that, I don't know, but it made us laugh. And we were actually considering ourselves very lucky that Guruji even cracked joked with us. So that something happened. After that, my wife's blood pressure recorded a perfect 81/20. And then she could stay off the medicine for quite a while. I mean, I think for years, until it flared up again when, at the time of pregnancy. Although it did flare up at the time of pregnancy, quite 4 or 5 years down the line, it didn't cause any damage, as in it didn't cause any damage to the child. We didn't have to deliver the child earlier. or anything like that. It was just essential hypertension, which I think even after childbirth for a few months, she had to be on medication. And after that, she was able to go off medication once more. Then it did flare up, many years later, as it happens to a lot of people. For example, I myself, I'm on medication for blood pressure, although I didn't have any when I was younger. So similarly, my wife also, eventually she did have to end up on medication, but that was years down the line. So Guruji kept her off medication for a reasonable amount of time when it mattered. So these are the kind of medical issues. There was one medical issue which was a lot more serious, which is impacting our lives in a significant way. I'll come to that towards the end, because so that was for my son. I'll cover that later. And that's not in the book because it happened after the book was published. There are 3-4 things which I'll add on to what's already there in the book when time comes. So then the next thing was going back to the time that I was talking about, was overseas assignment. The craze about the overseas assignment was, I think in today's context, it seems a bit overstressed, because these days life in India is quite easy, and there are all sorts of facilities and amenities which didn't used to be there when we were younger. So any software professional would either go to the US or to the UK. The preference would be in that order. So my US ventures didn't work out because of one reason or the other. I think that's how Guruji meant it to be, looking back. So my UK venture was through Siemens, but it wasn't really taking off, as mentioned, because I was placed offshore. And back then it was causing a lot of worries. But looking back again, in hindsight, I realized that I think that's the time when we met Guruji. So if I had gone straight, landing from Kolkata, Delhi, and then within the next few months, if I had flown off to the UK, then probably I wouldn't have met Guruji. So maybe he engineered all that, the delay and everything, but definitely it was all worth it. So anyway, I was waiting sort of on the bench to be deputed to the UK. Wasn't exactly on the bench. I had a lot of work, did other projects, but the long-term overseas assignment was elusive. And then even though I had that successful project, which was UK based, and I spent a few months in the UK, after I went back to India, there was again no sign of overseas assignments. They're all dried up, particularly following the depression that kind of engulfed the software industry, or all industries actually, following the September 11 attacks in the US. People were actually being laid off. Every day someone was being laid off, and we were just now thinking of an overseas assignment was more of a luxury because people were losing jobs in India itself. So again, it was in the distant horizon, nowhere even in the distant horizon. But one day I was called by my line manager, or actually his line manager, and I was told that there was a deputation that they would like me to go on, which was in the UK. And so just like that, against the flow of things, it happened. Although it was only for 6 months, but there was a potential that things might extend. So so we packed everything very quickly and left. But while I was waiting, something very important happened while I was waiting for my paperwork to go through, for work permit and everything. So one day I received this invite from one of so something was I think there was a marriage that was happening at someone's place. So someone from the Guruji's Sangat. So this, I didn't personally know the people, from that family, but that used to be Guruji's norm. So he used to get a bunch of invites and he distribute to whoever he would think fit. Many times we wouldn't understand why he would, on what basis he would pick the people that he would distribute the invites to. But on this occasion, we got picked. And in that invitation card, I think there was my name written, I think by Colonel Joshi, I was told later. But next to that, there was in Guruji's own writing, I saw the word that said England. I didn't know why at the time why he did that, but later people told me. So the way events unfolded later, people told me that that was my work permit, visa, permanent residency, citizenship, all rolled into one. That one word by England, and actually it happened that way. So we came to the UK for the assignment, and it was only for 6 months. And this client was a bit, I would say, dodgy, because they'd actually done the work themselves, most of it, and they just wanted us to test whether they'd done it correct. So they get the credit if it worked. If it didn't, then we picked up the blame. So that's how the whole thing was designed. But that's not the problem. The problem that I had was because of the way things had already been done. So there was distinct possibility that what was supposed to be a 6-month assignment would end in 4 months. So I was thinking, it's going to be the same story all over again. So go back to India after 4 months and then wait for the next opportunity, and we were not getting any younger. So I was thinking, right, let's see what happens. But then this time, Guruji had planned things differently. So it went all the way to 6 months. And then after that, out of the team of 5, I think 2 people were asked to stay back. The remaining 3 left. So I was chosen as one of the 2 that stayed back. And then so there was an extension of about, I think it turned up to be 10 more months on a different project at the same site. And when that ended, then I got deputed to another site, the place called Telford, different project. But because I was around, so they didn't get anyone from India. They just got me to add to that team. It was a place called Telford. It's like a village in the Midlands. So my first location was Blackpool in Yorkshire, Lancashire, and then to Telford in the Midlands. And then the office got shifted to Nottingham. That project got shifted to Nottingham. So then we all went to Nottingham. But my son was born, and everybody had left because the project for once finished in time. But I couldn't leave because my son was too young then. So I was just sticking around, and suddenly something came up in London, and we moved to London, and I've been here since. So I'll get to that in a bit more detail later. But what I'm trying to say here is, because he wrote England, Guruji wrote England in that invite, which I still have. So that had the kind of power, so that I think there were people trying to send me back to India, call me back, with assignments and stuff. More than once, we have had our backs packed to go back to India. There was a time when I wanted to go back to India as well, but that didn't happen because Guruji wanted me to stay back in the UK. And he made sure that that's how things unfolded. Various events in my life, that I would spend the rest of, I think, my life in the UK. So that's what he intended, and that's how things have turned out. So then going back to how things progressed at my work, on my work site, and also in my life. So as mentioned, we first went from Blackpool, went to Telford, where my wife conceived. And we were thinking that it wasn't a good place to have a child because of the medical facilities. So even though it was in the heart of UK, but the National Health Service in the UK, so it varied from place to place. So somewhere like London or a busier place, there are lots of hospitals that you can pick and choose from. But Telford was like a village, so there was this local maternity unit. The maternity unit local hospital was run by midwives and not consultants. And in order to see a consultant, we had to travel about 16 miles in taxi to a hospital called Royal Shrewsbury. And it was a long journey. And because my wife had complications because of her blood pressure flaring up, we would have to see consultants. It would be a complicated childbirth. We got to know that. We didn't really want to happen it there because in the event of an emergency, even though the ambulance service was good and everything, we didn't want to be 16 miles away from the hospital. We had to call a taxi, wait for a taxi or call an ambulance if it was an emergency. And then once she got admitted to the hospital, then I would have to sort of travel back the whole distance. And as there was no facility for someone else to stay at that hospital. So it was overall not looking good, but there was an option. So we kept praying to Guruji, and suddenly one day we heard that that whole project, so the unit there was shutting down, and the whole project was being moved to Nottingham. Nottingham was a much bigger city, maybe not as big as London, but I think it was the right mix between. So it was somewhere between a village like Telford and a city like London. It was somewhere in between, which is the most, I think, ideal. London is kind of too big to get from A to B. You very often get stuck in traffic, take a lot of time. But Nottingham was just the ideal place that we could have thought of at the time, and it had one of the best maternity hospitals, best obstetric units at the Queen's Medical at Nottingham, where eventually my son was born. So we moved to Nottingham. So it was logistically, it was quite a hassle, but I think in the long run, it did us a lot of good. It's much better than giving birth at a place like Telford. So we moved to Nottingham, and then now the question was, because the project was going through quite a tight situation, so we were badly pushed for time. So there was a lot of penalty that we would have to pay, our company would have to pay if we didn't deliver in time. So no one was allowed to go to actually Nottingham in advance and try and look for a house or anything. So it was told that the client would look up, so their manager would look up houses for us, houses, flats, whatever, for us, and they would be signing contracts, on our behalf. We wouldn't actually get to see the houses physically. They would just send back photographs and stuff, and based on that, we would have to sign off. And so that's how. And then we were going to move one day, pack up our lock, stock, and barrel, and move one day without having seen the house we are moving into. So that's how things were working. I was not happy with that, but there was no other option. I wasn't happy because I didn't want my wife to spend the rest of her pregnancy at a place where, in a house which we hadn't seen before, in a completely unknown city. So again, there's nothing that could be done apart from praying to Guruji, which obviously we did. And so one day, even before all this began, the house search began. I had looked up, at the time we didn't have Zoopla and Rightmove and all those websites as much functional as they are now. So I just casually searched and found a house which kind of liked, but that was just based on the pictures. We had no idea what kind of area it was and so on. So we just looked at it and said, what if we got this house? But then we left it to the client's manager to try and do the house hunting for us. And he kept sending us pictures, which we kept on rejecting, much to the embarrassment of my own manager, who was reporting to him. But I couldn't compromise on the quality of accommodation at that point of time in life. So I kept rejecting all the things that he was sending across to me. And then suddenly I got fed up and said, why don't you look for this house? So I sent him the picture of the house that I had looked up initially. I kind of thought that, for some reason, Guruji probably wanted to us to go to, look up that house. So I just sent the picture of that house, address and everything, the one that I had looked up on my first search, the first hit of my first search, and sent it across to him. So he was kind of surprised. He was like, what, you don't want me to look at this house, just book it for you. I said, look at the house. I'm not asking you to not look at the house, but then don't decide anything on your own. I kind of decided that we're going to go into this one. So just pay on her behalf and then we'll settle it. So he did that, maybe grudgingly. I didn't speak to him on that. My own manager was not very happy because I was overruling his superior's judgment and imposing my own. But honestly, at that point, I didn't really care. So we moved into that house, and it has been one of the best houses that we have lived in the UK so far, because I've gone from place to place in the UK until I settled down in London. I've been in all sorts of accommodation, holiday flats, houses, and so on. But this was the best house that we have lived in, until we got our own many years later, of course. But this was the best house. It was best possible house at the time that we could hope for. It was 10 minutes walking distance from the Queen's Medical Hospital. Not that we ever walked, but it was only 2 minutes by taxi. So my wife had to go, had to stay quite a few times because she would go for a checkup every Friday, and at times they would ask her to stay back if her blood pressure was not behaving. So she would just stay back for 1 or 2 nights and then come back. So we had many back and forth trips to the hospital, and it was all very convenient because we were right next to the hospital. So so that's that house, and everyone in the team of about 10 odd people who moved, everyone had issues with their house, without exception. The only exception was us. So it worked the first time, and everybody was kind of surprised as to how did you get the house even without even looking at it, as in without even getting anyone. The person who was doing the house hunting for us didn't even have to look for it. We just looked it up and sent the details to him, and it worked. Whereas the others, for whom he had looked up the houses, all of them had some sort of an issue, one issue or the other with the house, but ours worked perfectly the first time. So then after that, my son was born, and the childbirth was actually complicated. Or before I move on to that, so there's something which is not in the book. So I kept wondering, why did Guruji move 10 families from one place to another, just so that my child could be born in a good hospital? So just because we were facing logistics issues at Telford, because the Royal Shrewsbury Hospital, where my son would have been born if we hadn't been transferred to Nottingham, was that such a bad hospital? So I kept thinking of that a few times, that Guruji shut down one unit and moved everyone to a different place completely. Why did he do that? Just because we prayed that we wanted our son to be born in a hospital which was better than the Royal Shrewsbury one? It wasn't such a bad hospital. It's just that it was logistically difficult for us. So we kept thinking that. And then about a couple of decades later, we had the answer to that. So the Royal Shrewsbury Hospital came up in the news, I think a couple of years back, as there were too many toddler deaths, too many cot deaths, because of some issues that didn't really come out very clearly. But there were loads of cot deaths, stillborns, and very unfortunate events like that. And the whole thing was a bit of there were many conspiracy theories going around what actually happened. I didn't follow all that, but that was the hospital. It's quite scary now to think that my son would have been born in that hospital that had a very bad record. of toddler deaths at the time, and there was something wrong that was going on. I didn't follow the news quite to the end. A lot of disciplinary actions were taken, and a lot of changes were put in place to set things right. But that was a few years down the line. So that's how we realized. That's when I realized that Guruji obviously knew all that. So he didn't want my wife to get treated at that hospital during the childbirth. So he moved everyone to a different town, to a different city, to make sure that she had a safe childbirth. So yeah, this is not there in the book because this came to light only a couple of years earlier. But that was to us. Obviously, Guruji knew, and which is why he did what he did. So then when it comes to childbirth, yeah, it was quite complicated, and it was quite a harrowing experience if you ask, because I was all alone in an alien land, no friends and family around. The project had ended. The one and only project in my life that has ended in time, and everyone else went back. So, but I had to stay back because my wife was, I think, on the 9th month at that point. So I couldn't go back. I was there alone with no one that I knew around, and at the time, and there was a time when both my wife and my newborn son, they were both at the critical care unit, and it looked like there was no way out of this trouble. So the reason it happened was because my son, after he was born, they found some infection in his blood. They didn't quite know what the infection was, but they saw an infection. So they tried to do a lumbar puncture, which didn't work for a 2-day-old child. They tried lumbar puncture. They took all sorts of blood samples, but they couldn't figure out what the infection was. So they treated him with a wide range antibiotics just to keep him safe. But they were more worried because he didn't pass urine for the first 3-4 days after he was born, and they were starting to doubt his kidneys. So a bunch of doctors thought that you should order a kidney scan, but the others said there is no point in subjecting such a small child to that kind of radiation. So just hold on and give him more fluids to see if it's just general dehydration. So that's how sort of we were all kept. So for the first 4 or 5 days, we were kept hanging in the balance as to whether this is a kidney thing or this is just plain dehydration. So it's a last ditch method. They put him on a waterbed to try and see if it was dehydration, and that kind of worked. So eventually he passed his urine, and that's when we realized that there was nothing seriously wrong with him. But in the meantime, my wife had developed a very bad urine infection. They were so busy with the child that they sort of kind of neglected the mother a bit. And when she had temperatures of 105 degrees, they suddenly woke up and saying, "Oh, what's wrong?" So this is such a bad infection, and it's gone. It had progressed quite a bit, untreated. So then they put her on multiple antibiotics with the drip and everything, and it was almost a life-threatening. Became almost a life-threatening case, but she responded well to the antibiotics thanks to Guruji's grace. But then by the time we were out of the hospital, people usually in this country I've seen, they go to the hospital and they come back with the child the next day or the day after. But in my case, I think it took 14 days. So by the time my family was back at home, it was 14 days, and I'd been given a month to sort of pack up. But then my child's eardrums were still weak, and taking such a long flight back to India could have permanently damaged his eardrums. So that's why we were thinking, if I could get something locally for an assignment locally for the next 3-4 months, then I'm happy to fly back. But it was difficult to get an assignment even when you tried with time in your hands, and I had only a few weeks for something to show up matching my skills, and not very far from where we were. And that's when something happened at the BBC. Something came up. So my line manager in India had already spoken to his UK counterpart to look out for something for me, and Guruji created this opportunity at the BBC right at that moment. Now, it seems today, it seems like things happen very lined up one after the other automatically, so that I didn't have to sort of take any drastic action, like do anything drastic, like traveling with a 2-week-old child back to India, 8-9 hours flight, that would have exposed his eardrums to a lot of pressure and so on. But actually, in the background, Guruji engineered everything. It seems it all happened very smoothly now. But yeah, at the time, it seemed challenging that with a 2-week, I think it was 19 or 20 days old, when we had to travel from Nottingham, packed up everything, lock, stock, and barrel, and then move to a completely unknown city. So it was quite a challenge, but Guruji, with Guruji's blessings, we went through all that. So we traveled to London in a taxi. Our stuff was sent through a van, I think a few hours earlier. Then we were supposed to catch up with the van, but that journey, which should have taken 2.5 hours max, because I have done the journey, in my car only a few days back, and it took me 2.5 hours, max 3. But on that day, it took us 5-6 hours. We had to take multiple breaks and so on. By the time we reached, the goods, our stuff had been delivered, but the keys left with our property agent. Now the agent had shut down by the time, closed for the day by the time we reached. So they left it at a kebab shop nearby and so on. So we went through a lot of logistical hassles, but in the bigger scheme of things, everything fell into place. So that assignment was supposed to last only 3 months. It was really a trial. So we were taking handover from a company that had implemented quite a complicated sort of tool at the BBC, and Siemens were trying to take it over, but I think people prior to me had failed, and I was just brought there just on a trial basis. See if you can take a handover, then it's good. If you can try and get your head around the system, it's good. No harm done if it's not, because we're not expecting you to. So that was the kind of vibe. So it was more of a trial. And I realized that Guruji had created an opportunity for me, but I would have to sort of do the hard work now and try and see if it works. But with his blessings, that worked. So in 3 months' time, I think the handover was complete. And the other vendor left. I was asked to build up a bigger team, getting more people from India, which I did. So and at that point, I think Siemens India or Siemens UK that either send this person back home, or you keep him permanently with yourself. So that's when I joined Siemens UK officially, from being home based, as in from still being an employee of Siemens India. I became an employee of Siemens UK, and that's when I realized that I was probably going to be here long term. Then, so prior to that, as I said, people had tried to take me back to India, not meaning any harm, but because they wanted me back in India. There was roles to be filled, but Guruji stopped all that in the track. And then there was a time when, so my son was born with severe allergies, although he was healthy and everything. But what we didn't realize was he had many food allergies, like he was allergic to milk, soya, all sorts of nuts. And then every day we're realizing there were new things that he was allergic to. Like if my wife touched him after chopping potatoes, he would get rashes from raw potatoes. He could eat fried potatoes, but even if you touched him after chopping potatoes with with the kind of the raw potato skin, or something. I don't know what the allergy was from, but he would get rashes. So we were realizing that he was having allergies to many things, and we were running into new things every day. So it was really scary. We had to call the ambulance a couple of times. Once for the first time when we realized that he was allergic, so he was almost going into an anaphylactic shock. We didn't even know what that was. We just called the ambulance. They responded within minutes. Luckily, at times they have delays of maybe an hour or so, but that was just a life-saving thing. Again, with Guruji's grace, everything happened. So my wife just hung up the phone after calling the ambulance, and she was herself almost passing out because she was so scared to see my son all swollen up, and he was having difficulty to breathe, and my wife was also on the verge of collapsing. And the ambulance arrived even before she hung up. The ambulance was there knocking on the door. In fact, she wasn't even in a position to respond. So they just opened the door, I think with some sort of a master key, or one of the neighbors let them in. I don't know how they got in, but they took him to the hospital and saved his life. So it was quite scary, but I think we still wanted that. So we were told that when he's 5, he's going to grow out of his allergies, and then we could move back to India, because we really wanted him to start his education in India. But it didn't happen. So we prayed to Guruji a lot, and it seemed like his allergies were getting better. So the key test was when he was 5 years old, because I think 5 years, 10 years. So these are key sort of periods when people grow out of allergies. People may grow out of certain allergies. But in my son's case, so when the decisive test was when he was 5 years old, and we thought if Guruji, with Guruji's blessings, if he grows out of his allergies, then we could go back to India. So but the test that he had when he was 5, so that showed that his allergies had actually gone worse. That's when I saw the writing on the wall. When Guruji didn't want us to go back, realized that. So then we dropped our plans and thought that no, he should be. Guruji's meaning for him to go to school in this country. So that's how it should be. So then that's when our lives took a final turn. So all this time we had been like, well, we are here. We have enjoyed, 5-6 years of our lives here. Now financially we were better placed, and we could go back and spend the rest of our lives in India. But we didn't realize the Guruji must have written England in that invitation card, years ago for a reason. Then that's when we realized that we were not meant to go back to India. Even if we did forcibly, it wouldn't work out well for us. So we saw the writing on the wall. So we stayed back and started thinking of settling down in this country for the first time, seriously. So that's how things unfolded. Now, this bit, the last bit about my son's allergies, it's not there in the book, because obviously it happened much later. So my son was born in 2005, and it was around 2010 that he had his allergy test, when we were thinking that he would grow out of it, but he didn't. That was 2010. By the time we had got our permanent residency here, and we had also got our citizenship, we, as mentioned, we plan to take the citizenship, go back to India, and then if need be in the future, come back, as many people do. But for us, I think we're not meant to go back, as I mentioned. So he started going to school here. I'll get back to how his things went, my son's things went a bit later. I'll just try and see if I have left out anything. I think I've covered most of what's in the book. So now I'm moving to add a few things which are not in the books. For example, I've mentioned my son's allergies and why we couldn't go back to India. So now we kept worrying about the allergies because our life was very restricted with having to cater to his allergies, because we couldn't go anywhere outside to eat. Least of all to an Indian place, because all Indian food has either milk or nuts. unless someone is specifically guaranteeing that it's free of those allergens, we wouldn't be able to eat outside. When we went on a sort of holiday, say to somewhere in Europe or wherever, so we would have to carry his food with us and try and somehow sort of get his food cooked separately. So every time we'd go to breakfast at a hotel, we would have to talk to the chef first and make sure that it didn't have any of the allergens that he was allergic to. So it imposed serious restrictions. Even when we would fly to India, so my wife would have to cook his food before we took the flight, and take sufficient food to last if we're going via somewhere. Then she would have to cook quite a bit of, quite a few portions, and make sure that it didn't go off. So we would have to talk to the airline stuff and all that. So overall, it was quite a bit of a quite restrictive on what we could do, and lots of people were coming with all sorts of suggestions. Someone was saying that we should do homeopathy. Someone was saying that we should get this treated in India because there were more treatments of these kind of things in India. So people were asking, coming with all sorts of suggestions, but we just stuck with what the NHS, the National Health Service here, gave us, and they were not actually doing anything to treat him. They were just monitoring the extent of his allergies. To be honest, he wasn't put on any medication or anything like that. They were just monitoring rather than treating. But we stuck with that, and we were in a bit of a dilemma as to whether to leave it as it is or whether to do something on our own, like sort of see a consultant in India or something like that. But then Guruji came in my wife's dream one night and said, "Look, it's don't do anything. I'll cure him when time comes." So that's what he said. And after that, we were not left with any doubt. So we just hung in there and followed what the NHS did, just to keep an eye on his allergies. And by the time he was 10, he grew out of quite a few of them, at least the key ones. So like he grew out of his dairy allergy. He grew out of his allergy to prawns and things like that, the crustaceans, if you like. He grew out of soy allergy. Then what he was left with was nut allergies, which I think some of which he still has. He's grown out of, I think, some of the nuts, like the peanuts, hazelnuts, he can have, but he cannot have some of the tree nuts. Like we keep him away from most of the tree nuts. But I think it's very. We find it safe to avoid nuts when we don't know what's in a particular sort of menu item. If it has any kind of nuts, then we avoid it. But it's a lot less restrictive than it used to be. So Guruji made him grow out of his allergies when time came. But that happened when he was progressively. So by the time he was 10, he had grown out of quite a few of the allergens. So that made our lives a bit less difficult. Then, so medically, there were a few issues in the family apart from this. Say for example, my wife had kidney stones. We didn't realize that until she got tested when we were in India. She fell ill. It's very easy to get tested in India because you decide one morning and by the evening we have the results. Unlike here, we have to wait for appointments and stuff unless you're going private. So she got tested in India and she had kidney stones. She had, I think, a 6 millimeter stone, which was kind of a medium size, I was told. And after seeing a few consultants, I think the decision was that stone needed breaking down into smaller stones by using a method called lithotripsy. But we didn't have time for that because we were flying back to the UK. So one of the consultants told us, don't do anything here. When you go back to the UK, you tell them you need lithotripsy and they'll sort it out. So we came back here and we told them exactly what we were told. that she has a 6 millimeter stone, needs to be broken down into smaller ones. So can you please arrange a lithotripsy? The thing here is people in the NHS, they don't trust anyone else. As in any report that you get from a different country, they would just put it in the bin. They would just do their own tests, which they did here. So they did another scan on my wife, and they came back saying, "Who asked you to do lithotripsy?" I said, "A doctor in India did." Said, "Your wife doesn't have a 6 millimeter stone. She has multiple stones, which are all about 1-2 millimeters. So what you're trying to achieve by lithotripsy is not needed because it's already happened." So they must have doubted the Indian doctor, but I think we were shown the scans in India, and she really did have a bigger stone. But now what we were seeing is that big stone was kind of broken down into smaller stones, which exactly would have been achieved by that procedure. Only we didn't have to do that procedure. Guruji did that. So that was the end of the kidney thing. So they kept her on, on the clinic for 2 years. She had to take outpatients appointments. They would invite her every, I think, 5-6 months to look at her just to see if the stones behaved. Then after 2 years, they let her off, discharge her from that clinic because the stones seemed quite static and didn't move around or cause any pains or anything like that. And that's how they still are. They're there. They haven't gone out. They haven't come out, but they're not causing any issues. So Guruji sorted that out. And then there was this problem with there were pauses in my wife's heart, quite a chance discovery. So one day, I think she was feeling a bit of palpitation. She had this palpitation thing even before, earlier when she was younger. And she, one evening after food, I think the food wasn't good. I think she had some sort of an indigestion, and she started feeling the palpitations. So she went to the hospital just to get checked whether she was having any cardiac thing or anything like that. So they cleared her on that. They were not worried about the palpitations, but when they took her, when they monitored her heart, heart rate for the next 24 hours or something, they realized that towards the morning, 6:30ish, when she was in deep sleep, there would be pauses close to 3 seconds in her heart. That might have been something genetic. Maybe one of her parents had that, or someone in her family. Only no one got checked really, and this was quite a chance discovery that she was getting checked only because she went in with a different symptom. So, but now that they had seen it, they had to act on it. So the rule here is, if the pause is 3 seconds or above, then you have to have a pacemaker. Obviously, no one wants to have a pacemaker just like that at that age. So we were thinking, and they said that we wouldn't do it straight away. We would check you from time to time. So then they set her up with that monitor for 3 days, I think, once. And then for 7 days again. It's all a bit of a hassle because you have to take the monitor out every time you're having a bath. Firstly, they wouldn't let you have a bath or a shower because their expectation was you'd have to sort of you can't take a shower or a bath when you have it on. But they taught us how to take it on and off. So they said that maybe out of the 7 days, you can 2-3 days you can have a shower, take it off and put it back on. But that's at your own risk, because if that causes something to go wrong in the monitor, then you would have to repeat the whole process. So anyway, so it was a bit of a hassle, but we managed to do that, and the pauses went up to 2.8 seconds, so 0.2 second more, and she would have had to go for the pacemaker as per the rules. But I think Guruji sorted that out. So Guruji made sure that the condition came into light, but also made sure that she didn't have to go on the pacemaker. She didn't have to take the pacemaker, because that would have been a lifetime thing. So these are the medical issues, and they're still ongoing. My diabetes, it hasn't gone away. But with Guruji's blessings, it is in control. So it has been quite a while, since I was 29, and I'm 52 now. The prescription has changed, but not drastically. So it could have been a lot worse. But Guruji somehow, it's not that my readings are within limit every time, but if it goes up at one point, then next time with Guruji's blessings, it comes down. My awareness grows suddenly, and I start behaving, and then it comes down, and then I, go back to my old ways. It goes up. So there is a pattern which is kind of settled down. So hopefully it hasn't done me any long-term harm, because my other results, like kidney function, liver function, these are, cholesterol is in control. So yeah, to have a lot of symptoms, as in a lot of conditions, but with Guruji's blessings, things have not been that bad. They could have been much worse. So from a medical point of view, we have had all these experiences where without Guruji's help, we probably, it would have been a lot more serious. So I'm just looking up as what to cover next. Yeah, so my wife's family. So her mom passed away even before we met. So she had her dad and her sister, who's physically challenged. So she's Down syndrome sufferer. So she has to be taken care of around the clock. So when we were coming to the UK, on the last satsang that we went to when we were in India, we have gone back after that while we're still in the UK. But our last satsang, when we had sangat, when we were in India, so we approached Guruji for the first time, saying that we are going to the UK, but there is my wife was saying that there is my dad and my sister. So if Guruji could bless them. So, but even before she said that, so she was trying to air her concern for her parent. And then Guruji suddenly said, "Sade to bada parent kaun hai?" And then we realized that we had secured the maximum amount of blessings, maximum amount of reassurance that we possibly could. So all these many years that we had been in the UK, my father-in-law had a stroke, and he was past 70 then, but he came back from there. There was a bit of a problem with his voice box, which didn't recover. But other than that, he was fully functional. And then quite a few years down the line, had this bladder tumor, and 90% of the people thought that it would be malignant, because at that age, that location, it usually is malignant, and we didn't have a lot of hope. But he had his surgery and came back without any symptom. And obviously it was non-malignant. So eventually, he passed away when he was 88, but he didn't suffer. And so after he passed away, it has been a challenge getting my sister-in-law looked after. But Guruji has sort of arranged things the way we wouldn't have expected. So at one point, we would have been scared if we thought that we would have to look after from this kind of a distance, to look after someone who needs looking after for 24 hours, 24 hours a day, to coordinate that from here can be a bit of a pain. But Guruji got us the right help, the right kind of domestic help, and sort of people have volunteered to help, and as well, in their professional capacity, or just out of the goodness of their heart. So overall, yeah, it is a bit of a headache trying to coordinate things from here. It's not always smooth, but the way things have gone ahead, it is a permanent arrangement. It's not like we have to fly back every 2-3 months to sort things out, but we can sort of arrange things remotely, and there is a process in place, so we don't have to worry, and we can see that she's taken care of well. And obviously all that has happened with Guruji's blessings. So what he had reassured my wife with when we were in that last Sangat when we were back in India. So Guruji has been true to his word, and even though it has been difficult at times, but overall, again, in the bigger scheme of things, it has worked perfectly. And sitting here, we can coordinate my sister-in-law's care quite efficiently, the way things have been arranged. So, so that's one of the major things that has helped shape our life. Because if this wasn't possible, then we wouldn't have been able to stay back here, or maybe even if we did, my wife would have been, going back and forth, to India and between India and UK, and it would have been quite problematic because my son was growing up at the same time, and he needed her undivided attention too. So yeah, so the arrangement that exists now has worked perfectly. And then back to the UK, the way my son grew up. So firstly, we had not planned education for him in this country. We were thinking that we'd go back to India, and he would be educated in the Indian system, just as we both were. Not that we didn't trust the education system in this country, but the issue that we had was because there's so much of social security in this country. It's a welfare state. Even if someone doesn't do well, there are all sorts of benefits from the government. So in a state school where education is free, there's a lot of people who don't take education seriously. In India, maybe it's over competitive, which is also not good, but at least it's better than being too casual. So that was our initial thought behind planning to take him back to India. But Guruji didn't let that happen, as I've mentioned before. So we tried for one of those grammar schools where it is more competitive because they're selective. So at 11 years or 10 years of age, in order to move to high school, you have to take a test, quite a few tests actually, quite competitive that way. So then you get selected into a grammar school where they're very academic. Mostly Asian people do that. But the problem with those schools is, again, they're a bit over competitive and they just focus on studies and nothing else. So there is no rounded development, if you like, which is what we didn't like about those schools. But those are state schools as well, and they're free or nearly free. So what we ideally would have liked is to send him to a private school. But private schools, I think in London start at about 25,000-ish, even the cheaper ones. So, and not to talk about the more expensive ones. So £25,000 a year. It was quite beyond our range of affordability. But then we were kind of midway between. So if people who are really low income, if they pass the admission test to those schools, which are quite strict and very competitive as well. So if you clear the admission test, then if your parents' income is below a certain level, then you get a bursary, which is a 100% scholarship. But my salary was neither here nor there, so my son wouldn't qualify. It wasn't as low as one needs for a full bursary, and obviously it's not as high as one needs, as one that would help one afford the full salary without any scholarship. So I was neither here nor there. So anyway, my son took all sorts of admission tests. So he got through to the grammar schools, to all the grammar schools that he appeared for. Then he got into a private school as well. And I was thinking, unless they offer a certain amount of scholarship, I couldn't afford the rest. But surprisingly, because he had done very well in his tests, they offered him a lot of scholarship. It was more than double of what we had expected, of what the published figure is officially. So they offered him more than double that. And then we thought that we could manage the rest. So that's where he went, and so he got his private education in this country. Even with what was left, it stretched us a bit, but with Guruji's blessings, so we managed. So not only studies, but then he got into music. He was already doing some music even before he got into the school. But after that, after he went into the school, there was a lot of push, a lot of encouragement. So he plays 4 musical instruments, and did very well. So he got this academic plus the music scholarship. And then last year, he went to uni. He got into Oxford. And then I was thinking, there was a time when we were taking him back to India to school, and Guruji stopped us from doing that by not fixing his allergies when he was 5 years old. And now, so many years down the line, 15 years down the line, we realize why he had done what he had done, because he had meant for my son to go to Oxford. So that's when we realized that we would have been wrong if we forced our way back to India to get him into an Indian school and educated the way we were educated. Guruji had other plans for him. So, and because he kind of forced us, at the time we felt, oh, we should have gone back to India. But again, 15 years down the line, we realized that he had meant for him to go to Oxford. So that's why he didn't send him back to India. So can't complain at all there. So there are these occasions when Guruji has overridden what our prayers. He hasn't given us what we want to, and then invariably a few years down the line, or maybe decades down the line, we realized that what he had done at the time by not listening to us has actually been beneficial. That has happened so many times in our lives. So that's and then there are various other things that have happened. They keep happening every day. So I just probably should mention a few others. Like one that comes to my mind is when I bought this brand new car. It was a used one, as in it was new for me, but it was a used one, but in very good condition, a Ford Mondeo. And it wasn't from a roadside garage. It was from one of the leading car dealers in the UK. But they had sold me the car. In order to sell me the car quickly, they didn't want to lose my customs, so they sold me the car, and I didn't realize that the bonnet latch wasn't working. So when I called them, they said, "Oh, can you bring it? We have ordered your part." So I was like, "Why did you sell me the part? Why did you sell me the car if you hadn't, if you had ongoing work on the car?" So they asked me to bring the car down. So I was driving on the motorway, and I was in rush. And the moment I hit 70 miles an hour, the bonnet just stood up because of the pressure of the wind from the other direction. Just stood up, and I was completely blindsided. So all I could see was the bonnet, standing up in front of me. Couldn't see anything. Where I was going, I was traveling at 70 on the right lane. But I would have probably freaked out, but something happened at the time. I felt very calm. I just indicated to the left, crossed the 2 lanes to the left, and pulled over on the hard shoulder. And it was after I had done that, and I realized that I could have been killed so easily. It was a busy motorway. It was not the middle of the night. It was rush hour. And after that, I kind of panicked. But while I was doing it, I felt very calm. So that has to be Guruji. Otherwise, I wouldn't have survived that day. So things like this keep happening, which kind of tell us that of his presence. These are the major things that come to mind. But every day, there is something or the other. I think every week something happens. It's not that our lives are very easy. free of any sort of trouble or hassle. It's not that; it's quite the opposite. So we run into issues every day. But I guess that's quite common in this country, where it's not possible to afford domestic help, or you don't get people to drive you around. So it's a lot of hard work. Anything that you do, you have to do yourself. So there's bound to be so day to day, there would be lots of issues that people have to cope with apart from work. But with Guruji's blessings, I think we there are issues, but we can overcome them. We can deal with them. So he's given us that mental strength to deal with things on a day-to-day basis. Apart from obviously sorting out things in the bigger scheme of things, sorting out how the basic directions in our lives. So don't know if he's going to keep us here in the long term, or now that my son has grown up. So if he spends his life, probably will be here only because he doesn't speak so he only speaks a little bit of Bengali, and that too he can't read or write, and he doesn't speak any other language. So probably he'll be here only. But for us, I don't know what Guruji's plans are. Whether we live here for the rest of our lives or we go back to India, don't know. And most of my friends here have a plan. Some of them want to stay back, some of them want to go back. I don't know what I want to do, because as usual, I've left everything to Guruji. He'll decide and he'll let us know. Why putting ourselves to the bother of trying to decide? Because in the end, what he decides is going to happen. So yeah. So on that note, I think so. That's me for now. If there is anything any question that you have, then you can ask, or otherwise, that's all from me here.
Jai Guruji.
Jai Guruji.
Thank you so much, Pushpal uncle. Sorry about the confusion, first of all.
No, that's all right.
Yeah, and anyway, it's been nice hearing your satsang today, और बड़ा अच्छा लगा आपको जानकर। संगत जी, अंकल जब गुरुजी के दरबार में गए 2001 में, तो काफी परेशानियां ऑलरेडी एग्जिस्ट करती थी आपकी लाइफ में, फाइनेंशियल, और इनकी वाइफ मेडिकल प्रॉब्लम से, ब्लड प्रेशर, हाई ब्लड प्रेशर से गुजर रही थी। गुरुजी ने वो जो उस वक्त प्रॉब्लम्स थी वो भी, और जो उसके बाद भी आती रही, उनकी इनकी वाइफ की प्रेगनेंसी बड़ी डिफिकल्ट रही, घर वगैरह ढूंढने में भी काफी प्रॉब्लम रही, फिर बच्चा जो है उसको भी एलर्जीज रही काफी, और आप अंकल की भी तबीयत बाद में थोड़ा गड़बड़ रही। तो ये गुरुजी हम सब, हमारी जितनी भी दुविधाएं हैं, हमें उनको दूर करते हैं। जो भी सुख सुविधाएं हम जीवन में प्राप्त करना चाहते हैं वो सब प्रदान करते हैं। तो यही नटशेल है अंकल का सत्संग। दिव्याभा और लाइट ऑफ डिविनिटी दोनों में है। आई मीन ऑब्वियसली दोनों में ही होगा, क्योंकि वो दिव्याभा तो हिंदी अनुवाद है। सो उसमें आप थोड़ा विस्तार में अगर पढ़ना भी चाहें तो पढ़ सकते हैं। इंग्लिश में है फर्स्ट विजिट ग्रांट्स ऑल डिजायर्स, और हिंदी में है प्रथम दर्शन में ही कामना की पूर्ति। तो गुरुजी, जब से हम गुरुजी की शरण में चले जाते हैं तो ही मेक श्योर कि हमारा कोई भी काम अटके नहीं, हम जो भी समस्याओं से जूझ रहे हैं उन सब का निवारण हो जाए। तो आज जैसा कुछ लोगों ने हैंड्स रेज किए थे, तो उनको हम अगले किसी सत्र में, आई नोटेड डाउन द नेम्स, उनको हम अगले कुछ सत्रों में एक एक करके इनवाइट करते रहेंगे और वो भी अपना सत्संग शेयर कर पाएंगे। तो अब हम मंत्र जाप कर लेते हैं। तो थैंक यू वंस अगेन पुष्पल अंकल, एंड थैंक यू रीडिंग ऑफ शिव पुराण टीम for hosting these sessions, जो हम
जी।
सबके लिए कृपा का पात्र बनते हैं। गुरु जी की कृपा इन्हीं के माध्यम से हम तक पहुंचती है। तो अब हम मंत्र जाप करके आज के लिए आज्ञा लेंगे, अगले रविवार फिर जुड़ेंगे। जय गुरु जी। थैंक यू सो मच एवरीबॉडी।
जय गुरु जी की। अब हम मंत्र जाप करेंगे। नमः शिवाय। शिव जी सदा गुरुजी सदा नमः शिवाय। शिव जी सदा गुरुजी सदा नमः शिवाय। शिव जी सदा नमः शिवाय। गुरुजी सदा नमः शिवाय। शिव जी सदा नमः शिवाय। गुरुजी सदा नमः शिवाय। शिव जी सदा नमः शिवाय। गुरुजी सदा नमः शिवाय। शिव जी सदा नमः शिवाय। गुरुजी सदा शिव जी सदा सहाय। ओम नमः शिवाय। गुरुजी सदा सहाय। जय गुरु जी की।
जय गुरु जी महाराज, शुक्राना गुरु जी।
आज्ञा दीजिए मालिक।
शुक्राना
जय
गुरु जी,
गुरुजी,
अनंतम
शुक्राना
अनंतम
जय गुरु
शुक्राना।
जी,
सर्वत्र
शुक्राना
अपराध
गुरु जी।
करो महाराज।
आज्ञा दो गुरु जी
Okay.
महाराज।
जय
जय
गुरुजी,
गुरु जी।
शुक्राना गुरु जी। आज्ञा दीजिए।
जय गुरु
जय
जी,
गुरुजी,
शुक्राना
शुक्राना
गुरु
गुरु
जी,
जी।
अनंतम अनंतम शुक्राना मेरे महाराज।
गुरु जी सदा
जय गुरु जी, शुक्राना गुरु जी।
शुक्राना गुरु जी। शुक्राना गुरु जी।
शुक्राना।